So we're in XDefiant's first weekend here, and with it, I've had a lot of time to play since launch, and today I want to share some tips on how to do better if you find yourself in any areas struggling. Frankly, I did at times, still do. A lot of the times when we make these kind of tip videos, I do it as a way to reflect on my own gameplay and findings, and then figure, hey, this actually might be useful for somebody else too, and toss it up in hopes that it can. So today we're running down some gameplay tips, some mental and kind of like thought process tips on how to approach gameplay and more. So as we go along, drop your thoughts down below on what you're thinking about XDefiant thus far. You having fun? Let me know, but make sure to drop a like if you enjoyed the video or you find it at all insightful, and make sure to subscribe for more XDefiant coverage along with other FPS content like Modern Warfare 3's 4th season upcoming this week, more Black Ops 6 stuff as it happens in the future, and more. I'd love to have you in the community as we push towards 600,000 subscribers. Finally, my friends over at Gamer Advantage are having a site-wide sale where Code Espresso can stack on top of that to give you 35% off your entire order. One of the best deals they've had in a while, but more on that a little later. For now, let's take a look at some tips to improve in XDefiant. First and foremost, before we even jump into anything gameplay-wise, let's talk about some settings here. There's not a whole ton that I really want to go over here, so don't worry, but things that I'd highly recommend is adjusting your FOV. Your field of view, having it higher than 100 will give you that opportunity to view a little bit more in your peripherals, but it's something that's subjective. So anything higher than 100, I think you can feel comfortable with, but sometimes if you go like all the way up to 120, that fishbowl effect might be a little too much, so just test it out and see what works well for you. Now, if you do adjust that FOV, I'd highly recommend the ADS field of view as consistent. I wouldn't recommend independent, especially again if you go all the way up to like 120, because it goes back down to that default FOV when aimed down sight. So it causes like a little bit of a motion sickness inducing effect that when you go from high to low FOV like that so often as taking many gunfights, it's not going to be great for you. Then the only other thing that I'd say really recommend is adjusting your minimap settings, your minimap rotation. It sounds weird, but it's apparently set to off is what you want it. The idea here is that you want your minimap icon, your character, that carrot to always be pointing north so that you know what's directly in front of you. But when you think about that, the map is rotating around your character, right? But in the settings, for some reason, the orientation reflects heading if it's on, so on will reflect that carrot swiveling and the minimap not moving, but off, the orientation of the minimap will move in place of that. So make sure you have that as off. It's just one of those things that I think is easier to recognize in-game for situational awareness, but I mean, maybe that's just me. Anyways, beyond that, let's talk about some weapon selection tips. I think when you first talk about weapons that you want to like excel with and do well with, you have to first figure out what you're comfortable with. Close, medium, or long range play. For close range, I'd recommend the likes of the MP7 or P90. Medium range, I'd recommend the ACR, AK, or MDR, and an in-between between long and medium range, I'd recommend the Mark 20 SSR, that marksman rifle. It absolutely shreds. And then long range, either the snipers work, though personally, I find the scope in to be odd, so if you're like me, that may take a bit of time to get used to. But weapon selection is honestly everything when it comes to doing well. Finding a weapon that's comfortable to you is how you're going to do well, something you feel good with. And while there's basically no shortage of kills you can get with any weapon, there's absolutely weapons that will perform better than others. So if you want to check out any of those just recommended that you haven't already, I say go for it. Now, that said, when you do that, make sure you utilize the practice zone. I can actually say this now. Some of our settings stuff we talked about in our settings video, I recorded that before XDefiant actually went live, so I had no idea that at the time of publication, well, the practice zone was going to be offline for not just a few hours, but a few days. So that kind of skewed a little bit of the testing phase, but you can now use the practice zone to your advantage. Test out recoil patterns, play with the new builds of weapons, run the obstacle course, shoot some moving dummies to get the hang of the aim assist settings you have and a feel for targets on the go. I genuinely think that XDefiant's practice zone is one of the best of modern FPS titles right now. I'd love to see COD and other games adopt a multi-level approach to testing things like that, not just a single lane hallway for a firing range, but instead fleshed out for full practice space and not having to do it on the fly in game. But truly, the practice zone is such a great spot to try out new things, and especially those weapons we just talked about, especially if there's one that's not necessarily in your comfort zone. Also, it's one of those things that if you just want to warm up your aim a little bit and jump in immediately doing well, it's a great spot to. If you play ranked play come season 1, I'd recommend that absolutely to warm up a little bit, but I mean, just regular public matches doesn't matter too much, but if you want to, it's there. Now, beyond that, match and game mode selection tips are also very integral to doing well. Just like weaponry, match play is entirely dependent on feel as well. Each of the modes kind of have their own like feeling and identity to what can fit certain play styles. Best examples I can give is the duality of things like escort and hotshot. Both are my favorite modes, but they play so drastically different, it's kind of crazy. Like if you're a player that doesn't want to deal with the constant spawn flips, constant flanks, and you want a bit more of a linear experience, escort is absolutely for you. It's a ton of fun with with friends, but also can be played perfectly fine solo. I feel like for Escort, though, the pace is also a tad slower since you're focused on one singular point. Both you and the enemies have to go to that package to either stop or progress it. You have to come back to that. So versus, say, Hotshot, depending on the map, it's some of the most chaotic gameplay out of the entire game. Spawns are dictated on open pockets in the map, which, with how small some of the maps are and with how fast you can get around the map, they might not be empty for too long. Like, you can get some really bad spawns. Like, check these out, for example. But at the same time, it's so high intensity, it's almost always a gunfight, and so for that, I love it. It's a blast. So again, two very different scenarios here. One is always in the action. One is going to be chaotic. You're going to die a lot. But the other, it's a little bit more laid back and you can kind of predict the gameplay flow a little bit more. So it really comes down to what you feel is best for you. For that, I just recommend trying out a little bit of everything with those modes and then finding a mode you enjoy, maybe sticking with it at that point. As for in-game tips, once you actually get into specific matches, first and foremost, be ready for gunfights. The maps in XDefiant aren't all that big, so you'll very quickly get the hang of where the flow goes on maps, where those high traffic areas may be, and not to mention the TTK for XDefiant is rather quick, and that netcode, yeah, it's a little less than ideal, we'll say, at times, so being ready for a gunfight is imperative, because if you get hit, you very well may die. In those areas, for those high traffic locations, you want to make sure that you're ready for a gunfight. Like, as I note this video, I've just got some footage rolling on my second monitor for reference points in case I miss something on the fly, but it's a gameplay of Poblito. If you're mid-church, you're in the position to almost look directly into both sides of the map's spawn points. So if you know your team is behind you, you can pretty much guess where the other team is going to be coming from. And with only 2 to 3 lanes out of those spawn points, if you're ready for that, I mean, there's no sense in putting your life on the line for trying to impress who, just so you end up getting a quick draw kill or something like that. So being ready for gunfights is huge. Next, recognize the pace of play. Again, this differs from game mode to game mode, but also if a lobby seems too fast paced for you, like I can have the crackhead energy absolutely at any point, I will go in, but also there are games where I'm like, oh, this is a bit much for me. I don't know if I want to do all of this. So in that case, I'd recommend maybe just settling your pace of play down a little bit, because chances are a movement demon isn't going to get off a kill breaking your ankles if there's 30 meters between the two of you. And if you have a rifle that can gun at a distance, you're at the advantage there. So sometimes you just have to adapt on the fly. Sometimes you can play it like a madman and get all in on the action, but sometimes maybe it's not the best course of action. Next, power positions are absolutely everything. Every shooter has these. But when we talk about map flow, you'll come to find again those high traffic areas. Around them, there's usually 1 or 2 spots on each map that can mow down players in those areas of high traffic while still giving some semblance of cover. Like, obviously, if you're in a high traffic area, you're going to be in some sort of danger, but a lot of the maps will have those 1 or 2 points where you can dip out and get into cover if needed. And if you find those and control those either solo or as a team, you're in great position, literally. Next, movement and traversal. With those power points in mind, use that to your advantage. Recognize those high traffic areas that are utilized, because when they are, oftentimes that creates a flank route that is underutilized. So while controlling the flow of the map is a very important skill set to have, and if you're playing with a team, it can make the game so much easier for you and your squad. If you want to play that flank route and kind of flip things, create a little chaos, get some kills from behind, that's a great way to do so. Next, information is everything, especially in the context of being ready for a gunfight. Of course, XDefiant does have that minimap, red dots are there, which gives you a ton of information on where to expect gunfights. But also, conversely, even though you have those red dots on the minimap, also recognize that dead space, because a lot of the times if there's dead space, you don't see a teammate around you, you don't see any red dots around you, well, you might be in enemy territory. They just might not be firing. So you might be behind enemy lines. You might have a gunfight coming up. Just use that information to your advantage and make sure that you're ready. Unrelated to the gameplay itself, if you have a headset, play with that as well. You'll have much more spatial awareness and be able to pick up on those key audio cues that can really help you stay alive longer. Hearing those footsteps is something that can really help you. That's helped me a ton since launch already. Next, and the final sort of thing that I think can genuinely help your gameplay is playing a party. Following up on that information is key. Having another set of eyes, upwards of another 5 sets of eyes, that truly can help so much. You have callouts, you know where players are going to be, you know those map rotations, you know how to control the spawns as a group. It just makes things a lot more enjoyable. And honestly, with no skill-based matchmaking, you're gonna have a hard time for a match to match you up against 4, 5, 6 other players as well that can go toe-to-toe with you. So a lot of the times, you're just gonna go on a massive winning streak. Like, I think launch day, my squad might have gone on like a 16 win streak or something like that without even trying. So it's one of those things that it can greatly help your experience and help you do well. Finally, the last thing is just a tip overall, man. have some fun. I mean, this game, the lack of skill-based matchmaking, I personally feel is relieving. I'm getting a genuine mix of lobbies and not something that feels artificial. Like, I play solo a lot, and this feels like a game I can play solo, something that the last couple of years, I feel like I haven't had the opportunity to, because if I do, I know for a fact I'm going to be 1v5 every single game just because the way the matchmaking works. Not to toot my own horn too much, but as a higher skilled player in a top percent of a couple million players probably, do I think I'm the best? Absolutely not, but having played FPS games daily for 15 years, I'd hope I'm a little bit better than average. But XDefiant now instills that sort of confidence again to be able to play solo, because I know that I'm not going to be matched up as a 1v5 essentially, or 1v6. I'm going to have that luck of the draw where some teams are going to be better, some are not going to be great, and sometimes my teammates will be good. So it's just one of those things that it's a refreshing experience in a sort of landscape right now with FPS games that skill-based matchmaking to some degree is ever present. So just have some fun with it. It's a deviation. It's not meant to take itself seriously. I mean, in the firing range and rumored for a future faction, we have rabbits. Like, this game's just for fun, man. Have some fun with it. So that said, that's some tips that I would recommend on how to do better in XDefiant here and improve your gameplay experience. Now, before we wrap everything up, a quick reminder, check out my friends over at Gamer Advantage for what I firmly believe are the best blue light glasses on the market. They're the most lightweight, comfortable, and durable frames out there as far as I've used, and I definitely think they've helped my daily productivity. And right now, there's a limited time 25% off discount site-wide going on for Memorial Day. Now, the cool part is that code Espresso, my 10% discount, stacks on top of that to give you 35% off your entire order, which is one of the best deals we've had in a long while. So if you guys would like to learn more, at the very least, I'd recommend checking out their website where they can better break down the science and all the specifics way better than I could. But what I can personally say is that I'd highly recommend them. So if you guys would like to learn more, check the link in the description below. And if you'd like to pick something up for yourself, use code Espresso to get 35% off your entire order. But for now, that's what we're going to call it. So drop your thoughts down below. What are you guys liking, disliking about XDefiant? Having a good time? Whatever the case, drop your thoughts. But if you enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things XDefiant, COD, and a bunch of other FPS content I'd love to have in the community. But for now, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.